Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, brothers and sisters. I'm speak in front of you. I would like to introduce myself to you all. My name is Monica. You can call me Monique. And now I'm third semester at Universitas Maritim Raja Ali Haji Tanjung Pinang. My major is English education. And then now I will presentation about students learning strategies for developing speaking ability. I will presentation about the abstract. This study was done to study the learning strategies used by both low and high performance speaking students in developing their speaking skill, as well as the differences between the learning strategies used by both groups of learners. Okay, we postulated that one aspect involved in the process of developing speaking skill was the learning strategies used by the learners. The result of this study indicated that high performance speaking students had better balance in using all kinds of learning strategies like memorize, cognitive, compensatory, metacognitive, affective, and social. For enhancing their speaking skills, the same could not be found with low performance speaking students. They should use appropriate language learning strategies more consciously, purposefully, and frequently to be more successful in developing their speaking skills. And then, introduction. In this age of globalization, English has increasingly become the medium in every domain of communication, both in local and global context. As a result, there is a demand of speakers who can English effectively in every country. English is called the international language and also the second language of many countries in the world. In Indonesia, English is considered a foreign language. For it is a language studied in an environment where it is not be primary means for daily interaction, and the use of the language is restricted. Okay, among the 4 key language skills, speaking is deemed to be the most important skill that must be mastered well in learning a new language. However, speaking a foreign language is not an easy skill to be mastered by learners. Learners consider speaking as the most difficult skill since it needs great courage as well as preparation to speak well in the new language. Okay, speaking has 5 components, namely grammar, vocabulary, comprehension, fluency, and pronunciation. And students have to be aware of these components. One of the aspects that are involved in the first process of developing speaking skills is the language learning strategies used by the learners themselves. This is how the learners learn by themselves. Learning strategies are steps taken by students to enhance their own learning. Seeking out conversation partners, asking for correction, and practicing out loud are some examples of learning strategies used by learners to develop speaking skills. Based on the background described above, this research focuses on the following 2 questions. The first question is, what are the learning strategies used by learners with low performance in speaking to improve their speaking abilities. And the second question is, what are the learning strategies used by learners with high performance in speaking to improve their speaking abilities? Okay, accordingly, the research objective in this study are to find out the learning strategies used by learners with high and low speaking performance to develop their speaking ability. Then, speaking. What is speaking? Speaking is an ability to orally express opinion, thoughts, facts, and feelings to other people, animals, and even to oneself. Speaking is an interactive process of constructing meaning that involves producing and receiving and processing information. In speaking, the students learn how to organize ideas, arrange sentences, and express language in spoken form with good pronunciation and comprehensible language. They must also learn about how to deliver the meaning, how the language according to the context they are speaking. Then, language learning strategies. Language learners use language learning strategies in their learning process. Learning strategies are commonly defined as the operation or process which are consciously or unconsciously selected and employed by the learner to learn the target language or facilitate a language task. Strategies as techniques, approaches, or deliberate actions that students take in order to facilitate a learning and recall of both linguistic and content area information. Learning strategies are used by learners to help them understand new information better and to help them solve language problems. Learners have to recognize the power of consciously using language learning strategies in order to make learning quicker, easier, more effective, more efficient, and more fun. Okay, next, classification of language learning strategies. Categorize language learning strategies into three main groups are learning strategies, communication strategies, and social strategies. Learning strategies include all strategies that are directly related to learning, or those which indirectly involve the learning process. Cognitive strategies comprise clarification, practice, memorizing, and monitoring. Planning, setting goals, and self-management belong to metacognitive strategies. Differentiate language learning strategies into 6 groups. 1. Memory strategies. Strategies that help learners store and retrieve new information. And number 2, cognitive strategies. Strategies that enable learners to understand and produce new language by many different means. Number 3 is compensation strategies. Strategies that aid learners to overcoming knowledge gaps and continuing to communicate authentically. Okay, number 4, effective strategies. Strategies that help develop self-confidence. And number 5, metacognitive strategies. Strategies that help learners to regulate their own cognitive abilities, and to competence. And the last, number 6, social strategies. Strategies that provide increased interaction and more empathic understanding. Then, methodology. The selection was done according to the information from the teacher that the students selected had given either high or low speaking performance. It was based on the students' speaking achievements, not by the teacher during the teaching or learning processes. The students were considered high performance according to certain indicators that easily mastered new content being talked about. Then they spoke smoothly. This meant that they did not have many or word intonation. Furthermore, they used good speaking skills such as voice projection, vocal fluency, expression, eye contact, and appropriate body language gestures. An interview involving self-observation, which enable the learners to thinking about what they generally do when faced with a familiar language taught. The interviews were done in Indonesian. The responses were transcribed and translated to English. Number 1, what do you do to improve your pronunciation? Number 2, what do you do to improve your vocabulary? Number 3, what do you do to make your grammar better? Number 4, what do you do to improve your fluency in speaking? And the last, number 5, what do you do to improve your comprehension in speaking? During the interview, data was recorded using hand pan recorder. Then findings. Table 1 below illustrates the result and averages of the students' language learning strategies in developing the table. Then, table 2 shows the kinds of students' learning strategies used in developing speaking abilities. And this the table. The information from interviews in Table 2 showed that there were 53 kinds of speaking strategies implemented by the high speaking performance students, whilst the low speaking performance students only mentioned 29 strategies. Discussion. From the result of the questionnaires, we note that the learning strategies and most often used by the students with low speaking performance were usually compensation and social strategies. Table 2, all kinds of strategies were usually employed by the high speaking performance students in learning and practicing speaking. This means that successful language learners demonstrated greater consistency in applying more effective strategies. So the conclusion is the research findings showed that high speaking performance students use more learning strategies compared to those with low speaking performance. They employed 53 strategies to help them enhance their speaking abilities, whilst the low performance students only use 29 strategies. In addition, they were more aware and more creative in using the strategies, which made them more successful in completing language tasks. On the other hand, the strategies that were frequently used by low-speaking performance students. However, from the strategies mentioned, there were several which seemed not very effective to complete the language task. The sought low performance students use learning strategies less consciously and less appropriately. In other words, they seemed to use strategies without being able to identify them. Okay, that's all from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.